Warning, this video is experimental and very stupid. Good luck. Dragon Quest I, or as I like to call it, Granddad, is one of the JRPGs of all time. And there needs to be an emphasis in this distinction because it started the entire genre. Released by Enix in 1986, Granddad was, and technically still is, a giant milestone for video games, specifically the RPG landscape. As mentioned earlier, it built the foundation for what is now known as JRPGs. Back in a time where most role-playing video games are designed after tabletop rule sets, made to utilize the whole keyboard, and remind players of their lacking math skills, Granddad has certain objectives in mind: to bring role-playing games to the Japanese market, and make sure that the game could fit and be designed within the scope and limitations of a home console. Personally, I assumed this was gonna be a retro game I'll be playing in the name of appreciating history and finally experiencing a JRPG classic. Instead, what I got was an amazing example of thinking inside the box. Granddad not only became a template for future JRPGs, but also shifted some of the dynamics of game design. For example, Granddad was less arcadey than its contemporaries, was able to provide a simple yet intimate adventure, managed to make a playthrough feel unique thanks to variants, and made menuing fun. It basically took the best parts of gaming and role-playing of its time and turned it into a simple but engaging product. Another thing I find interesting is that it's able to balance the role-playing aspect from the video game aspect. Despite being a digital product, playing Granddad still feels like role-playing. You're a hero tasked with saving a world that surprisingly has a semblance of culture and history, no matter how small it is. Folks speak in ye old Elizabethan English, named characters sound multicultural, artifacts are scattered around the world, an economy that is built around peace. Oh fuck. There's even a healthy representation of furries, featheries, 30-year-old versions, and future Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Some of these are quirks of the localization, but it still contributes to making the player's adventure. Almost like the adventure is the story. Wait a second. It's not the first time I've said this phrase, but it's a very good fit for Dragon Quest I. Granddad has a simple narrative that arguably, even for its time, wasn't anything new. There's a call to action, you slay monsters, rescue the princess, and save the world. I'm not saying the story is inconsequential, rather it shines in a different way thanks to some of its core aspects: roleplay, variance, and environmental storytelling. Roleplay is a no-brainer. You're interacting with a role-playing video game, what did you expect? And yes, compared to its PC contemporaries and the tabletop rule sets that inspired said contemporaries, the role-playing and customizability in Granddad is limited in comparison. However, it gives the player enough freedom to make it feel and seem like they're in control of their character, or at least more than usual with respect to the narrative end goal. It also gives the player a chance to fill in the gaps and have fun with imagination like a tabletop campaign. Variance leans towards the statistics and game mechanics, ensuring that the numbers involved in the game are never static unless necessary. Things like character stats or the damage you deal or heal aren't fully static. It's surprising how such a small variance has a huge impact on the playthrough. Environmental storytelling, and to some extent passive storytelling, is nearly everything else about the adventure that's not outright mentioned by the game. They're the not so obvious content that, if the player chooses to engage in, becomes side quests without the markers. They are emergent stories, optional accessories that help you personalize your adventure. Massive emphasis on optional, by the way, as there's a high chance that the player may not encounter these details unless they're talking to every NPC, exploring every place in the world, picking up and using every item, or intentionally choosing to ignore them. These three things manage to provide layers upon layers of depth to the adventure. And an interesting note is that whenever one of the three fails to cover a certain aspect of the game, the other two finds a way to make up for it. This gives Granddad some staying power and replayability despite its limited scope. That said, despite the amount of praise I've given, it doesn't change the fact that the game is small in scope, and compared to even games of 3 to 5 years after, Granddad is unapologetically straightforward. Most if not all of the remaining aspects of the game progresses linearly. Most of your character's growth can be boiled down to bigger numbers better, and that's it. There's no decision to be made, no passives to take into consideration, no trade-offs that the player is willing to sacrifice. You better start grinding, get a good amount of gold, and buy the next best in slot that you can because you'll need it. I understand that I'm asking for a lot and most likely being unfair, especially for a game that fucking started the genre. I also understand that what I'm saying can be applied to most if not all JRPGs JRPGs and should rather be seen as a testament to how the genre in game design had progressed in the decades that followed. However, for better or for worse, this is the state of Granddad and it is what it is. Moving on, once you have control of your character, the game world is your oyster. You're now free to embark on your quests however you like. Will you level grind in an attempt to save yourself some time? Will you immediately rush to hard areas to sort of break the game? As I said, there's a lot of places where you can put your imagination to work, and in my case, I took advantage of this freedom. So let me share how my own playthrough became a very, very stupid idea. If you thought I wouldn't do this, I'm disappointed. For my playthrough, I turned Dragon Quest into an isekai adventure. Yes, I went that far. Yes, I'm aware this is cringe. And no, salvation is a myth. I am playing as Taro Yamada, a Japanese salaryman who had an unfortunate accident on his way to work. He was trapped in a void for a split second, and then he opens his eyes and finds himself in a throne room. Immediately, he is greeted by a king named Lorik. As soon as Taro hears the name, he already knows the fate that has fallen to him. Somehow, he got transported into the game world of Dragon Quest I. Fortunately for Taro, the Japanese are trained at a very young age to play Dragon Quest, and it's extensively taught in their history class. The king gives the usual intro about the state of the kingdom and his request to save his only daughter. Further sweeten the deal, the king gives Taro the only blessing he can, an official title called Slime Hunter. With this blessing, Taro is able to reap the full benefits of fighting slimes, increasing the gold and experience gains. You may think this cheapens and massively shortens the grind. It's a yes and no on both ends, but I don't care as it was totally worth it. Having landed the best possible start, Taro takes full advantage of the situation and sets out into the new world by committing slime genocide. Finally, the years of working under corporate and enduring toxic work cultures are about to pay off. After an hour of turning slimes into an endangered species, Taro returns to the king stronger and better than ever. The king notices his improved strength, but notes that Taro doesn't have the drip to back up his massive stats. So, with recommendation from the king, Taro will embark on a walking tour around the game world to improve his equipment. Thankfully, years of walking around Tokyo will serve him well, though he notes that he misses public transportation. Thankfully, he knows the teleportation spells, so that'll make return trips easier. After getting himself kitted with some good equipment and dealing with the world's horrible economy, Taro sets out to save a Welsh woman. The trip to the princess's prison was rather anticlimactic. Upon reaching the princess's cell, Taro is attacked by a green dragon which reminds him of a Yu-Gi-Oh card. Taro manages to slay the dragon and rescues the princess. Not wanting to deal with her highness, Taro immediately uses the teleportation spell and offloads the princess to her father just so he can be done with her. He doesn't even listen to the king and immediately sets out for the Dragon Lord. Before Taro attempts to throw his he remembers that he has to regain his ancestors' equipment to have a proper chance of defeating El Señor Dragon. It's now time for a treasure hunt for his ancestors' equipment, plus some other things needed to access the final dungeons. I swear I didn't forget about them. Thankfully, 2 of his ancestors' equipment is just lying around somewhere and easy to get. Conveniently, the very weapon that will be used to slay El Señor Dragon is found in the very dungeon where the final boss is. Thanks, game designers! After countless walking and looking at the map online, Taro finally retrieves the sword that will defeat the Dragon Lord. Taro finally reaches the Dragon Lord. Immediately, he is reminded of the Dark Lord from Utopia and immediately questions if the Dark Lord was a reference to this game. Remembering that the boss has 2 faces, Taro tries his best to not use any healing spells during the first fight. Once the Mii form was defeated, it was time for the final battle. As a side note, the Dragon form is an actual boss fight and it will beat your ass if you're not too careful. But thankfully, Taro spent some time massively reducing the slime population earlier, so it all checks out. The Dragon form has been defeated. It was now time for one final teleport. Upon his return, Taro is greeted by a grand entrance and celebration of his victory. The king also seems giddier than usual, but Taro assumes it's probably because the threat is gone. After an exchange of words, the king offers Taro the chance of princedom with his daughter's hand in marriage. Fearing for his life, Dragon Quest I is still a great game that surprisingly manages to hold up despite its simple design and arguable lack of features when compared to today's gaming landscape. Reminds of a simpler time when the main focus was to allow players to create their story with regards to the adventure they're on, instead of experiencing a narrative that is more or less set in stone. There's also a shocking amount of replayability with the game, perhaps in part of its directness, freedom, and variance. Players don't need to do challenge runs. Just a simple change in how they would handle events is enough to shake things up a bit. However, due to its status as granddad of JRPGs, there are definitely some aspects of it that feel antiquated and lacking. Thankfully, there are multiple mods and patches created by the community to change some aspects of the game. But it would also be careless of me to call these the end-all be-all, the ultimate solutions in experiencing an old game. Be prepared to do some grinding or looking for things that you may have gotten accustomed to from other JRPGs. But if you're willing to tackle these challenges, luckily the game has been re-released to multiple platforms over the years. It's a matter of choosing which version you want to play. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi there! If you like the content, consider leaving a like and subscribing. If you want to hear my thoughts, follow me on Twitter at KenAthomos. Link is in the description. Take care and stay safe always.